You ever look back at a Game of the Year winner and think, wait, that was Game of the Year? Awards age weird. What looked like a masterpiece 5 years ago can feel painfully dated today. Today, we're counting down 10 GOTY games that aged like milk. Some were never that great, some got surpassed, and one is already a disaster less than a year after winning. We're not saying these games are bad, but the trophies sure didn't last. Let's get into it. Kicking us off at number 10 is The Outer Worlds. Back in 2019, this Obsidian Entertainment RPG somehow walked away with Game of the Year wins from the New York Game Awards and Destructoid.
The New York Video Game Awards 2020 Big Apple Award for Best Game goes to The Outer Worlds.
Two pretty respected outlets, and on the surface, it makes sense. It's funny, sharp, and feels like a spiritual successor to Fallout New Vegas. 2019 was one of the most stacked years in gaming history. We're talking Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, the Resident Evil 2 remake, Disco Elysium, Death Stranding, Control, Outer Wilds, and oh yeah, a little game called Red Dead Redemption 2 was still riding its 2018 wave. And someone somewhere looked at all of that and said, yeah, The Outer Worlds is the best of the year. That alone aged like milk left in the sun. But here's where it really falls apart. The Outer Worlds 2 dropped in October 2025 and reviewers called it a major step up in every direction. Better combat, bigger worlds, sharper writing. 88% of critics recommended it on OpenCritic, with Game Informer calling it my favorite Obsidian game yet. Compared to the original, the sequel made the first game look like a rough prototype. The cruel twist? Outer Worlds 2 actually failed to meet sales expectations from Xbox Game Studios, so the franchise's reputation is shaky overall. But that doesn't change the fact that the GOTY-winning original now feels like an early test build, surpassed by its own sequel within 6 years. That's the definition of aging like milk. At number 9, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the 2002 Game of the Year winner from IGN, GameSpot, and Edge magazine. Tommy Vercetti, neon-soaked Miami, a 80s soundtrack, and gameplay that absolutely does not hold up in 2026. Let's just say it, Vice City controls like a brick wrapped in duct tape. The driving is floaty. The shooting is borderline unplayable. Try aiming at anything with the auto-lock system and the camera fights you the entire time. The character animations look like Tommy is sliding around on ice skates. And the mission design? Brutal by modern standards. Fail one objective at the end of a 20-minute mission? Restart the entire thing. There's an entire category of missions that gamers in 2026 would not tolerate. The helicopter mission to deliver RC bombs. The Demolition Man mission. Driving the boat. The infamous Phnom Penh 86 Rage Quit. These were considered challenging in 2002. Today, they're considered design crimes. The GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition Remaster in 2021 made things worse. Floating NPCs, broken textures, rain that looked like blocky cement. Rockstar literally had to apologize and patch the game over a year. The remaster that was supposed to honor Vice City instead exposed how badly it had aged. Compare it to GTA 5, which 12 plus years later still feels modern, or GTA San Andreas, which actually aged with grace. Vice City sits awkwardly in the middle, too dated to play smoothly, too iconic to forget. The soundtrack still slaps, the vibe is still unmatched. But as a playable game of the year, Vice City aged like a tub of milk in the Miami sun. It's still nostalgic, but barely functional. At number 8, Super Mario Maker, Giant Bomb's 2015 Game of the Year. And folks, this might be the saddest pick on this entire list, because the game is literally dying as we speak. When it launched on the Wii U in 2015, Super Mario Maker was a phenomenon. You could build your own Mario levels, upload them to the internet, and play levels from millions of other creators worldwide. It was a creative playground that completely changed what a Mario game could be. Giant Bomb wasn't crazy for crowning it GOTY. The game absolutely deserved it at the time. Here's the problem. Super Mario Maker on Wii U was now almost completely unplayable. Nintendo pulled the game from the Wii U eShop in January 2021. They ended new course uploads in March 2021. And then on April 8th, 2024, the day every Mario Maker fan still remembers, Nintendo shut down all online level access permanently. That means if you own a physical copy of Super Mario Maker today, it's a glorified coaster. Without the millions of community-created levels that define the experience, you're left with a handful of generic pre-built stages and a level editor that has nowhere to share its creations. Yes, Super Mario Maker 2 exists on the Switch. Yes, that game is great. But Super Mario Maker 2 isn't the game that won GOTY in 2015. The game that won GOTY is now essentially deleted from the internet. There's no greater example of a game of the year aging like milk than one that literally cannot be played the way it was designed to be played. A live service Mario game that died and took its trophy with it. At number 7, Gone Home. The indie darling that won multiple 2013 Game of the Year awards from outlets like Polygon, Wired, USA Today, and more. Back in 2013, this was hailed as a revolutionary moment for video game storytelling, a turning point for the medium. Today, it's a footnote. Gone Home is a walking simulator where you explore an empty house, read notes, and piece together a story about your sister. That was groundbreaking in 2013. The mainstream gaming press lost their minds over its mature narrative themes and its rejection of traditional gameplay. Some critics called it the most important game of the year. Then, everyone moved on. Here's why it aged like milk. The entire indie storytelling scene has lapped Gone Home 100 times over. Games like What Remains of Edith Finch, Firewatch, Florence, Disco Elysium, and Pentiment have absolutely demolished what Gone Home did, doing it with more emotional depth, better gameplay, and stronger writing. Gone Home walked so they could run, but Gone Home itself is still walking. And there's another, darker reason Gone Home doesn't get talked about anymore. Fulbright, the studio behind Gone Home, imploded. Reports emerged about toxic leadership from the studio head. Most of the team left. The studio became a ghost of itself. The legacy of Gone Home now lives under a cloud of behind-the-scenes drama that the games media doesn't really want to discuss. Gone Home was important, we're not denying that, but the praise it got, that aged like milk in record time. It's a game that history remembers but nobody actually replays. At number 6, Mortal Kombat Armageddon, the 2006 Best Fighting Game winner at the Spike Video Game Awards. And yes, you heard that right. Mortal Kombat Armageddon, a game most MK fans pretend doesn't exist, won an award. Let's get this straight. Mortal Kombat Armageddon tried to do everything. It crammed every single Mortal Kombat character ever made into one roster, over 60 fighters. It added a single-player adventure mode. It included a kart racing minigame, Kart Racing, in Mortal Kombat. And it introduced Create a Fighter, letting you build your own custom characters. That sounds amazing on paper. In practice, it was a disaster. Because they crammed so many characters into one game, every single fighter ended up feeling identical. Iconic characters lost their unique signature moves. Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Raiden, they all started moving the same way. They removed the legendary character-specific fatalities and replaced them with Create a Fatality, a system where you chain generic finishers together. It was, objectively, the worst fatality system in Mortal Kombat history. The story was forgettable. The combat was sluggish. The graphics were already dated by 2006, and the iconic Mortal Kombat charm was buried under bloat. How this game won Best Fighting Game in 2006 when Tekken 5, Dark Resurrection, Dead or Alive 4, Virtua Fighter 5, and Guilty Gear XX Accent Core all existed, we may never know. The Spike VGAs had a habit of bizarre picks, but this one is in the Hall of Fame. Today, Mortal Kombat Armageddon is universally considered one of the worst entries in the franchise. NetherRealm doesn't acknowledge it. Fans don't replay it. Even Ed Boon barely talks about it. That's what aging like milk looks like. At number 5, Dragon Age the Veilguard, Time Magazine's 2024 Game of the Year. And this might be the most controversial pick on this entire list because it aged like milk in less than 12 months. Here's the timeline. Veilguard launched in October 2024. By December 2024, Time Magazine called it the perfection of 2024 and crowned it Game of the Year, putting it above games like Metaphor, ReFantazio, and Black Myth, Wukong. And gamers lost their minds because by the time Time published that list, the Veilguard backlash was already in full swing. Sales reportedly underperformed BioWare and EA's internal expectations. BioWare was hit with significant layoffs in the months following launch. The game was being mocked across Reddit, YouTube, and gaming forums for its tonal disconnect from previous Dragon Age games, the writing, the combat system, and the deviation from the dark fantasy identity the series was known for. The lukewarm critical reception was clear in the numbers, generally mixed to positive reviews but well below what a flagship Dragon Age release demanded. And here's the part that really hurts the trophy. Dragon Age the Veilguard wasn't even nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards in December 2024. Astrobot won that. Black Myth, Wukong took player's voice. Metaphor, ReFantazio dominated the conversation. The Veilguard didn't even crack the official nominee list at the industry's biggest awards show. But Time Magazine still called it the best game of the year. That's not aging like milk, that's aging like a glass of milk that was already curdled when they poured it into the trophy. The most rapidly aged GOTY pick in gaming history, by a mile. At number 4, Mass Effect 3, the conclusion to one of the most beloved RPG trilogies in gaming history. Won Game of the Year from Game Informer, PC Gamer, and multiple other outlets in 2012. And then, within weeks of launch, it became the most controversial GOTY winner of the decade. You know what we're about to talk about. The ending. For 3 games, BioWare promised that your choices would matter, that every save you imported, every romance you pursued, every alien race you saved or doomed would all culminate in a personalized, branching finale. The marketing literally promised dozens of unique endings based on your choices across the trilogy. What players got was 3 nearly identical color-coded endings. Red, green, blue. The choice was pressed onto you in the final 10 minutes by a glowing space child who appeared out of nowhere with a philosophical lecture about synthetic versus organic life. Your imported saves barely mattered. Your relationships barely referenced. Your hundreds of hours of choices reduced to picking a color at the very end. The community revolt was historic. The Retake Mass Effect fan campaign trended for weeks across Reddit, Twitter, and BioWare's own forums. Fans demanded and eventually received a free extended cut DLC in July 2012 just to add closure to the ending. BioWare publicly acknowledged the criticism and committed to improving the conclusion. To this day, Mass Effect 3 is the textbook example of how to ruin a Game of the Year ending. The first 95% of the game is genuinely great. The combat is the best in the series. The character moments are emotional, but that ending poisoned the entire franchise. Until BioWare proves otherwise with Mass Effect 5, the trilogy's finale stays curdled. At number 3, BioShock Infinite, Game Informer's 2013 Game of the Year. At launch, it was praised as a masterpiece, mind-bending narrative, stunning visuals. Columbia, the floating city, was hailed as one of the greatest video game settings ever crafted. Some critics called it the best shooter of the generation. Then, time passed, and gamers started actually thinking about it. Today, BioShock Infinite is one of the most re-evaluated games in modern gaming history. The narrative that was once called philosophical genius is now widely seen as shallow pseudo-intellectual fluff, dressed up in multiverse window dressing. The twist ending that blew minds in 2013 reads as confused and self-contradictory in 2026. But the bigger problem is the gameplay. BioShock Infinite's combat aged spectacularly poorly. It's a generic 2-weapon limit shooter with a basic plasmid system reskinned as Vigors. Combat encounters are repetitive, the AI is brain dead, and the sky rail traversal, which was supposed to be revolutionary, gets reduced to a gimmick after the first hour. Compare it to the original BioShock, a tight atmospheric horror experience with meaningful choice, or BioShock 2, the underrated sequel with deeper combat and better story pacing. Both have aged significantly better than Infinite. The internet has done complete 180-degree pivots on Infinite's ranking within the trilogy, and the racial themes, which were highlighted at launch as bold and important, have been criticized as half-baked once the surface narrative gets explored. Even Ken Levine, the game's director, has openly talked about wishing he'd done some things differently. BioShock Infinite still has gorgeous visuals and a great soundtrack, but as the best shooter of 2013, that's a take that's harder and harder to defend each year. At number 2, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, the 2006 BAFTA Game of the Year. And this one's a special kind of aged like milk because, be honest, when was the last time you heard anyone talk about this game? Yeah, exactly. At the time, Grawl was a big deal. It was one of the early Xbox 360 showcases. The visuals were jaw-dropping for 2006. The squad command system was innovative. You could issue tactical commands to your AI teammates and watch them execute coordinated assaults. It felt like the future of military shooters. Today, Grawl is the definition of forgotten. Try to find a YouTube video about it from the last 5 years. Try to find someone replaying it. Try to find someone defending it. You'll come up empty. The Tom Clancy franchise itself has completely moved on through The Division, Wildlands, Breakpoint, and beyond. None of them reference Grawl. None of them honor it. It's been buried. And the gameplay? It does not hold up. The controls feel stiff and unintuitive. The squad command system that was revolutionary in 2006 now feels clunky compared to modern tactical games. The graphics that wowed reviewers are now a washed-out brown and gray nightmare that looks straight out of the every game is muddy era of the Xbox 360. The plot is forgettable. The characters are interchangeable. The voice acting is wooden. And the missions blend together into a brown blur. BAFTA gave this game the highest honor in 2006 over Gears of War, Oblivion, and Okami, and history has completely forgotten it. That's what happens when a GOTY winner ages without leaving any cultural fingerprint behind. It's gone. And at number 1, The Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion, the 2006 Spike Video Game Awards Game of the Year. A game so beloved that Bethesda Shadow dropped a full remaster in April 2025. And then, through that very remaster, gamers got reminded of exactly how Oblivion is aged like a forgotten tub of yogurt in the back of the fridge. When Oblivion launched in 2006, it was revolutionary. A massive open world. Cyrodiil felt alive. The Oblivion gates added apocalyptic stakes. The game won basically every GOTY award that year and helped define what an open world RPG could be. Then April 22nd, 2025 happened, and the Oblivion Remastered dropped. The remaster was generally well received, with 87% of critics recommending it on OpenCritic, and it won Best Remake Remaster at the 2025 Golden Joystick Awards. But here's the thing, that fresh coat of Unreal Engine 5 paint couldn't hide what was underneath. The leveling system is broken. Critically, hilariously broken. Oblivion uses a system where enemies scale to your level, but only certain skills count toward leveling. So if you accidentally level up wrong, enemies become impossible bullet sponges in glass armor while you swing for 2 damage. Newcomers in 2025 were completely blindsided. Reddit threads exploded with "Why is my character useless?" posts. The combat is floaty and weightless. The dungeons feel randomized and repetitive. The voice acting, once considered top tier, is unintentionally hilarious now. Every NPC has the same 5 voices. The Radiant AI that was supposed to revolutionize NPC behavior just makes them walk in circles. Oblivion is still beloved. The atmosphere is still magical. But the gameplay mechanics? aged like absolute milk. The remaster proved it. There's no debate. That's our list. Which GOTY winner do you think aged worst? Drop your hot take in the comments, smash like, subscribe for weekly gaming countdowns, and we'll see you next time.